Welcome to Spectrum News within the week. I am Emedion James coming to you live from Uyo. Let's take a look at today's headlines. President Tinubu visits survivors of Benue attacks in hospitals. Federal government considers a 30 billion naira gratuity plan for civil servants. Iran accuses G7 of siding with Israel on de-escalation call. We'll bring you details of the stories and more in just a moment. Welcome to Spectrum News within the week. First in the news this afternoon is that President Bola Tinubu within the week visited persons recovering from last Friday's attack by armed headers on Yelawata in Guma local government area of Benue State. The attack claimed over 100 lives. The patients are recuperating at the Benue State Hospital University Teaching Hospital. Tinubu arrived at the Nigerian Air Force Base Airport in Makurdi at about 12:58 p.m. on a condolence visit to Benue State. He was received by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, and host Governor Hyacinth Alia. They were joined by Senate Minority Leader Senator Abba Moro, other federal lawmakers from Benue State, and the governors of states in the North Central Zone, ministers, and government appointees. In the meantime, President Bola Tinubu has flagged off the construction of a new headquarters for the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) in Abuja. He also called on all Nigerians to actively support efforts to strengthen national institutions, safeguard democratic freedoms, and protect the future of the country. Addressing dignitaries at the flag-off ceremony, the president emphasized that democracy in Nigeria is not a finished product, but a continuous journey that requires collective commitment and vigilance and effort. Speaking at the ceremony, President Tinubu described the groundbreaking of the new INEC headquarters as more than a symbolic event, stressing that the structure represents Nigeria's dedication to credible elections and institutional independence. Meanwhile, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory (FCT), Nyesom Wike, has assured the President of the speedy completion of the new Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) headquarters. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu within the week commissioned a series of strategic development projects undertaken by Kaduna State, cutting across infrastructure renewal, healthcare delivery, skills acquisition, and economic empowerment. The projects executed under Governor Uba Sani's administration include a 300-bed hospital, multi-township and rural roads, vocational training institutes, and a fleet of 100 compressed natural gas buses to modernize the state public transport system. During the visit, President Tinubu commissioned three new institutes of vocational training and skill development located in Rikashunkong, Soba, and Sumaru, Qatar. He noted that the centers are designed to build a skilled workforce and support youth empowerment in line with Kaduna's ambition to become a national hub for technical education and human capital development. The president also flagged off several key road projects, including the 24-kilometer Kafanchang Township Road, the Tundungbiri Road, and the 22-kilometer road linking Kura and Kuba local government areas, adding that these roads are expected to significantly improve connectivity and economic activities across the affected regions. In this next report, President Tinubu within the week affirmed that Kaduna State is rising again from the ashes of insecurity, violence, and discord that permeated its past. The president showered encomium on Governor Uba Sani, describing him as the architect of the peace that had been restored in the state after assuming the reins. He urged other governors to emulate his unique style of administration, particularly his focus on youth empowerment through skill development. The president believes that such progressive initiative targeted at securing the nation's future would be supported by the federal government. President Tinubu, who was on a one-day visit to the state, spoke when he inaugurated some projects implemented by the Sani administration. Away from that, the federal government, alongside education stakeholders, has commenced move to ensure inclusive, safe, and gender-sensitive learning environment in the country. The event was organized in Abuja by the National Senior Secondary Education Commission to boost the capacity of special education task officers from the 36 states and the FCT. The Minister of State for Education, Professor Suwaibu Ahmed, called for the collaboration from school owners, development partners, and state government to promote inclusive and gender learning schools to promote national development. Ahmed, represented by the Deputy Director, Science and Technology Department of the Ministry, Kehinde Osineke, urged participants to make use of the opportunity provided to carry everyone along. She also explained that the workshop was a critical step in translating gender and inclusive education policies into tangible and everyday practices. In the meantime, the federal government has begun the implementation of the National Policy on Health Workforce Migration. This was disclosed by the president of the Nigerian Medical Association, Professor Bala Andu, who noted that the federal government has launched a housing scheme for healthcare workers across the country as part of the implementation of the policy. Recall that in August 2024, President Bola Tinubu approved a national policy on health workforce migration to address the challenges facing Nigeria's health and human resources. The coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Ali Pate, who disclosed the development, noted that the policy was more than just a response to the ongoing exodus of healthcare professionals, but a comprehensive strategy to manage, harness, and reverse health workers' migration. Elsewhere, the federal government has announced plans to kick off a 30 billion naira yearly gratuity framework for civil servants in treasury-funded ministries, departments, and agencies (MDAS) under the Contributory Pension Scheme (CPS). The Director General of the National Pension Commission, PENCOM, Omalola Oloworaran, in a statement during a captive visit to the head of civil service of the Federation, Esther Wilson Jock, stated that PENCOM is working on modalities for the establishment of a gratuity scheme in line with Section 4 of the PRA 2014 for retiring employees of federal government treasury funded MDAS. The PENCOM DG said it has been estimated that the gratuity scheme would cost the federal government about 30 billion naira per annum, as confirmed by the 2024 Stakeholders Committee on Outstanding Pension Liabilities. If retiring federal employees are paid 100% of the last gross annual remuneration, as stated. In response, Wilson Jack expressed her full support for all the initiatives and commended PENCON for its proactive approach to improving pension administration. She further pledged to issue the necessary circulars to MDAS and to collaborate closely with PENCOM in developing the modalities and securing the approvals for the gratuity scheme. In a separate development, the federal government has called on Nigerian universities to actively support its commitment to achieving a net zero green transition by 2060 through evidence based research on climate change and renewable energy solutions. The appeal was made by the Minister of Environment, Weber Lawal, in a keynote address delivered at a three-day biannual international conference titled Accelerating Climate Action for Sustainable Livelihood in Nigeria, organized by Faculty of Social Sciences, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Osun State. Lawal, who was represented by Dr. Iniobong Abiola Awu, a director in the Ministry of Climate Change, reaffirmed the federal government's commitment to building climate resilient communities through inclusive and equitable growth strategies. He also announced the launch of the Green School Initiative, a program designed to foster environmental awareness and sustainability in schools. Meanwhile, the federal government has disclosed that it has reached an agreement with gas companies for the supply of an additional 20 million standard cubic feet of gas to meet the growing demands for compressed natural gas by vehicle owners. As part of its broader strategy, the government said it plans to convert between 125,000 and 200,000 vehicles to run on CNG by the end of this year. Speaking at the official launch of the Mobility CNG Supply Framework in Abuja, the program director and chief executive of the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative, Michael Oluwagbemi, stated that the initiative is targeting the deployment of 1 million CNG powered vehicles by 2027. He also added that the federal government, in collaboration with private sector partners, is also accelerating the rollout of CNG refueling stations across the country to support these transitions. Let's move now to the red chambers, where the Nigerian Senate within the week issued Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL) a 7-day ultimatum to account for 210 trillion naira in missing funds in its coffers as it contained in audited financial statements spanning 2017 to 2023. This was made known on Wednesday during a session of the Senate Committee on Public Accounts, where NNPCL Chief Financial Officer Dapo Shegun and all the executives of the state-owned oil firms were present. According to the chairman of this committee, Senator Aliyu Wadada, he described the inconsistency in NNPCL's financial records as unacceptable and warned that the Senate will pursue the matter to full extent of its oversight powers. He lamented how occurred expenses of 103 trillion naira, which included 600 billion naira in retention fees, unspecified legal fees, and auditors' charges, all without any accompanying documentation or reference contracts. Let's move now to the Green Chambers, where the House of Representatives Public Accounts Committee within the week warned 13 non compliant oil companies to appear before it to answer questions in the ongoing probe of non-remittance of money due to the federal government or face sanctions. The companies allegedly owe the federal government about $456.95 million in unremitted revenues. In a statement issued by its spokesman, Akin Rotimi, the House noted that despite repeated invitations and public notices through national newspapers, the companies failed to appear before the committee. He said the development prompted the committee to consider punitive actions in line with legislative and constitutional provisions. In the meantime, the House of Representatives Committee on Nutrition and Food Security has commenced a probe into the 1.12 trillion naira spent on the Anchor Borrowers Program ABP. The committee is also probing the Nassau Microfinance Bank for the 215 billion naira spent on agro-businesses, as well as the Bank of Industry for disbursing 3 billion naira to 22,120 smallholder farmers through the agriculture value chain. Financing program. The chairman of the committee, Chike Okafor, during an invitative hearing on the alleged misuse of government invitations and agricultural funding by departments, agencies, schemes, and programs of the federal government, raised concerns that of the 24 participating financial institutions who disbursed the amount for the APB, they only had evidence of 9 of the institutions. He said one of the key oversight mandates of the committee is to ensure proper implementation of intervention programs by relevant MDAs of government related to food security and nutrition. From the judiciary, Justice Chizoba Oji of the Federal Capital Territory High Court within the week granted Kogi Central Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan a 50 million naira bail after she pleaded not guilty to alleged defamation. The female lawmaker was granted bail with one surety who must have landed property in Abuja and was a responsible resident, I beg your pardon, of the FCT. Recall that the lawmaker was arraigned by the federal government on 3 counts, bordering on alleged defamation of Senate President Godswill Akpabio and former governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello. The judge therefore adjourned the case to September 23, 2025 for trial. To long court matters, the Court of Appeal, Lagos Division, has overturned the final forfeiture order issued on the asset of the former governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, to the federal government. In a split decision of 2 to 1, the appellant court set aside the judgment and ordered a retrial of the case at the lower court. Recall that the Federal High Court in Lagos had in its ruling on November 1st, 2024, granted the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission's application for the final forfeiture of Emefiele's assets. The forfeited assets included 2 fully detached duplexes located in Lekki Phase 1, Lagos, an undeveloped land measuring 1,919.5 square meters at Ikoyi, a bungalow and a 4-bedroom duplex also at Ikoyi, Lagos. Others were an industrial complex under construction in Agbo, Delta State, 8 units of uncompleted apartments on a plot measuring 2,457.6 square meters at Ikoyi, Lagos, and a fully detached duplex on a plot measuring 2,217.8 square meters at Bank Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. Additionally, the court ordered the forfeiture of $2.4 billion and shared certificate in Quintov's Global Fund Limited to the federal government. In the meantime, the Federal Capital Territory High Court in Maitama, Abuja, has granted bail to the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, in a sum of 2 billion naira. Emefiele was arraigned on 8 counts bordering on the alleged unlawful acquisition of a housing estate comprising 753 units. He was also accused of embezzling and controlling balance of naira through proxy accounts. At the commencement of the proceedings, Rotimi Oyedepo, who represented the prosecution, informed the court that the matter was scheduled for arraignment on an 8 count charge. In response, Matthew Booker led Emefiele's defense team, challenged the court jurisdiction, arguing that the charges did not directly link the defendant to the alleged offenses. Away from that, the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Hassan Abubakar, has called for the expedited delivery of 12 AH-2 1Z Viper attack helicopters from being acquired from the United States. He stated that their timely arrival was critical to enhance Nigeria's ongoing counter-terrorism and internal security operations. A statement by the NAF spokesman, Air Commando Ejodama Zahid Abubakar, during a high-level program management review meeting in San Diego, California, United States, stressed that the Nigerian Air Force was committed to ensuring that every necessary step was taken to fast-track the procurement and seamless integration of the combat helicopters. He said the meeting brought together top government officials of the US and representatives of Bell Textron, manufacturers of the AH-1D Viper, to review progress on the helicopter deal and fine-tune implementation timelines. In another development, Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project (SERAP) has urged President Bola Tinubu to promptly set up a presidential panel of inquiry to investigate the unlawful annulment of the elections of June 12, 1993, and to identify those suspected to be responsible for the deliberate violent violation of Nigeria's democratic freedoms. Serap urged Tinubu to direct the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Lateef Fagbemi San, as a defender of public interest, to bring to justice anyone responsible for the unlawful annulment of the elections of June 12, 1993, regardless of their political status or affiliation. They also directed Fagbemi to urgently draft and send to the National Assembly an executive bill to amend the Electoral Act 2022, including making the electronic transmission of elections results mandatory and allowing access to every voter to elections documents. Recall that the President, in his speech at the National Assembly to mark Nigeria's Democracy Day, expressed commitment to dedicate themselves to the ideals of June 12: freedom, transparent and accountable government, social justice, active citizen participation, and a just society where no one is oppressed. In a letter signed by SERP Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadara, the organization said this express commitment would not be enough unless President Tinubu's government demonstrates the political will to combat impunity for the annulment of the June 12 elections and advance Nigeria's democratic freedoms. In a separate development, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff (CDS) Christopher Musa has highlighted three critical issues in Yelewata Town, Benue State, massacre by suspected herdsmen. The CDS spoke when he visited Benue over the spark in killings at Benue communities. According to him, there are three pronged issues to the Benue crisis between farmers and herders, namely land disputes and cattle rustling. He noted that a political solution is the best fix to the three issues. In a related development, Benue State Governor Hyacinth Alia has called for community policing as a solution to the insecurity crisis currently rocking the state. Alia made the call while cautioning against affected communities resorting to self-reliance. The governor warned that self-defense could make the communities vulnerable to more attacks. Away from that, the Nigerian Governors Forum has condemned the brutal attack on the people of Gelawata and Daudu in the Guma local government area of Benue State. The NGF, in a press statement signed by its chairman, Abdulrahman Abdulrazak, who is the governor of Kwara State, said the hideous act represents a grievous affront to human dignity which must be condemned. It condoled the people of Benue State, Hyacinth Elia, and the people of Gelawata in Guma local government area of the state. According to him, the Nigeria's Governors Forum stands in unwavering solidarity with the bereaved families and the state government at the time of profound sorrow. In a related development, the People's Democratic Party (PDP) and the Labour Party (LP) have condemned within the week the brutal attack on Yelawata community in Benue State last week Friday. This attack claimed several lives and left hundreds displaced. The opposition parties, in separate statements released on Monday, want President Bola Tinubu to take a decisive action that will see the perpetrators of the disastrous acts apprehended and prosecuted. The parties commiserated with the families of the victims of the senseless killings in Benue State and other parts of the country and urged them not to relent in their effort to ensure the security of lives and properties in Nigeria. In a statement signed by the National Publicity Secretary Dapo Olugonagba, the PDP accused Tinubu and the All Progressive Congress members of being largely unconcerned. Still to come in the news. Nigeria, Germany signs 20 million euros grant agreement to boost energy transition project. Do stay tuned for this and many more right after the breather.
Broadening your horizon is what every living being not only genuinely desires, but heartily pursues and intentionally invests in. For in the gathering of men, only those whose minds are in tune with the dynamics of the past, present, and future innovations, inventions, politics, and governance are respected. We are Spectrum Television, and broadening your horizon is our obsession. Risk on your decoder now to connect Spectrum Television on the frequency 12589, symbol rate 26250. That is frequency 12589, symbol rate 26250, polarization horizontal, and join our online community at spectrumtvlive.ng. For further inquiries, please call 0704 158 5642 or 0704 541 7707. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Now let's go to the rest of today's stories. Let's move now to Africa, where the family of a Kenyan civilian who was shot by police during the latest protest over the alleged killing of a blogger in a police custody demanded accountability for the violence. The 22-year-old Boniface Kariuki, a hawker like his father, was holding a packet of face masks and is believed to have been caught up in a confrontation with two officers in Nairobi as hundreds of protesters clashed with police. One officer who had concealed his face with a mask shot him at a close range in the head as he walked away. Tuesday's protests in the capital followed tensions over the death of the blogger Albert Owang, who was found dead while in custody at the Central Police Station. Away from that, Uganda President Yoweri Museveni has signed into law an amendment allowing military tribunals to try civilians under certain circumstances. Recall that the Supreme Court had called such trials unconstitutional in a ruling judge, arguing that military courts were neither impartial nor competent to express judicial functions. The Uganda Parliament passed an amendment last month to address some of these issues despite boycott from opposition lawmakers who said the new bill violated the Supreme Court's decision. Still in Africa, a court in Mali has placed Barrick Mining's Lolo Guntogo gold mining complex under provincial administration for 6 months. The move hands control of Canada's biggest operation to state appointed management and is seen as a major escalation in an ongoing dispute between the company and Mali's military roles. Barrick Gold had been in conflict with the administration over alleged unpaid taxes and unfair contracts with past government. The decision comes after Mali closed Barrick's offices in the capital, Bamako, and warned it would take control of the mine, which has been shuttered owing to month-long dispute. On a foreign scene, Iran within the week accused a group of 7 nations of siding with Israel in its call for de escalation in the intensifying conflict now in almost its eighth day. At the G7 summit in Canada, leaders including US President Donald Trump had called for de escalation of the conflict while stressing Israel had the right to defend itself. In a concluding statement, the G7 leaders said they were committed to peace and stability in the Middle East. Meanwhile, China within the week urged its citizens to leave Iran as soon as possible as Iran's conflict with Israel escalated. Meanwhile, China has accused President Donald Trump of pouring oil on the mounting conflict between Israel and Iran after the US leader warned Iran residents to immediately evacuate. Following decades of enmity and a prolonged shadow war, Israel launched a surprise aerial campaign last week against targets across Iran, saying it aimed to prevent its Act 4 from achieving atomic weapons, an ambition Tehran denies. Meanwhile, the sudden flare up in hostilities have sparked fears of a wider conflict with Trump's urging Iran to back to negotiating table after Israel's attack derailed ongoing nuclear talks. Meanwhile, China's military has called the British warship recent passage through the Taiwan Strait a disruptive act of intentional provocation that undermines peace and stability. The British Royal Navy says HMS Spy Patrol on Wednesday was part of a long planned deployment and was in accordance with international law. The patrol, the first by a British naval vessel, is in 4 years, comes as a UK carrier strike group arrives in a region for a deployment that will last in several months. China considers Taiwan its territory, a claim that self-ruled Taiwan rejects and has not ruled out the use of force to reunify the island. A spokesman from China's Navy criticized the UK for publicly hyping up the journey of HMS Spy and said the UK's claim were a distortion of legal principle and an attempt to mislead the public. Away from that, Russian President Vladimir Putin within the week said that NATO's drive to increase defense spending was no threat to Moscow ahead of the alliance's expected approval of a plan to bolster European military capacity. In a late night briefing, Putin vowed to continue advancing Ukraine, questioned President Vladimir Zelensky's legitimacy, and dismissed civilian death from Russian attacks. Meanwhile, the Western Military Alliance will hold a crucial summit in The Hague next week to discuss increasing defense spending to 5% of GDP under pressure from US President Donald Trump. Putin has cast his offensive in Ukraine as part of a wider conflict between Russia and US-led NATO, which has been Ukraine's staunchest backer since Russia launched its offensive in February 2022. On a business news, the federal government has entered into a 20 million euro initial grant agreement with the government of Germany to support the country's energy transition agenda, with a focus on renewable energy development, vocational training, and energy assets for unreserved communities. The agreement was signed in Abuja by the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Abubakar Bagudu, on behalf of Nigeria, and Dr. Karin Jason, First Secretary and Head of Development Cooperation at the German Embassy in Nigeria, and Gerald Kunemud, representative of the KfW Development Bank on behalf of Germany. Facilitated through the KfW Development Bank and the African Enterprise Challenge Fund, the grant forms part of Germany's broader commitment to supporting climate-friendly and development initiatives across Africa. Speaking at the signing of the ceremony held in the office, Bagudu said the project is structured around three key pillars: promoting the adoption of renewable energy for greater efficiency, scaling of vocational training in renewable technologies, and expanding energy infrastructure to unreserved areas. Still in business, the US Federal Reserve held interest rates steady for a fourth consecutive meeting Wednesday, forecasting higher inflation and a cooler growth this year as President Donald Trump's tariff begins to take hold and geopolitical uncertainty swells. Federal Chair Jerome Powell told reporters that the central bank will make better decisions if it waited for a few months to understand how tariff impacts inflation, spending, and hiring, in a sign that the next rate adjustment would take some time to materialize. For now, he expects to learn more over the summer, while officials appear increasingly divided on whether they can cut interest rates at all in 2025. The Federal kept the benchmark leading lending rate at a range between 4.27% and 4.50% at the end of its two-day meeting, with officials pending in two rate reduction this year, similarly to early projection. Still to come in the news. Liverpool seals record swap for Ref from Leverkusen. Stay tuned for details of this in just a moment. Many thanks for staying tuned. And the health news in commemoration of the 2025 International Day of the African Child, the United Nations Children's Fund has urged the government to increase the budget allocation for children's health, education, nutrition, protection, and social welfare. UNICEF said there was an urgent need to raise investment in child-focused transition to adulthood without deprivations. The United Nations agency noted that when government champions and implement child-centered budget, it leads to the realization of the objective of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Nigeria is a signatory. Still in health, International Medical Humanitarian Organization, Medicine Sans Frontiers, also known as Doctors Without Borders, have ramped up its intervention in the fight against Lassa fever in Ebonyi State, southeast Nigeria, following years of repeated outbreaks that have overwhelmed the state health infrastructure and led to the death of several healthcare workers. MSF, in a press statement issued on Wednesday, said its engagement in Ebonyi began on June 2, 2018, during what it described as one of the deadliest Lassa fever outbreaks recorded in the region. According to the group, the 2018 outbreak severely affected the Alexaqueme Federal Hospital, teaching hospital in Abakaliki, the state's main referral hospital, leaving the facility stretched beyond capacity and contributing to multiple facilities, including the death of a 16-year the death of a 16 health workers comprising doctors, nurses, and hospital cleaners. He also described the tense atmosphere during the outbreak. Dr. Nenaya Ajayi, who headed clinical services at the hospital's virological unit at the time, recounted how panic gripped the entire facility. In sport, Liverpool completed the blockbuster signing of Germany forward Florian Wirth from Bayer Leverkusen in a deal which would reportedly rise to a Premier League record fee. It was reported in England that the Premier League champions would pay an initial £100 million, that is $134 million, for Wirth, comfortably surpassing their own record outlay. A further £16 million in performance-related add-ons will make it a British record deal. However, reports in Germany suggested the fee could be even higher, starting at €130 million, with add-ons taking it to €150 million. Still in sport, Liverpool have agreed to sign Bournemouth left-back Milos Karkas in a deal worth a reported fee of £40 million, according to report. Karkas is due to travel to Merseyside for a medical before completing his move to the Premier League champions. The 21-year-old caught Liverpool's eye last season with his fine form for Bournemouth, including 2 goals and 5 assists in 38 Premier League appearances. Liverpool sporting director Richard Hughes brought Karkas to Bournemouth from AS Alkmaar during his time at the Vitality Stadium. Still in sport, Liverpool forward Mohamed Salah has been nominated among 6 players for the Professional Footballers Association Men Players of the Year award on Friday. The 33-year-old played a key role in Liverpool's Premier League title triumph last season with 29 goals and 18 assists. The Egypt star was voted Footballer of the Year by the Football Writers Association, securing almost 90% of the vote, marking the biggest winning margin this century. Salah is joined on a shortlist by Liverpool teammate Alexis McAllister, Arsenal decline Rice, Cole Palmer of Chelsea, Newcastle striker Alexander Isak, and Manchester United midfielder Bruno Fernandes. Lastly, on the news at this hour, Steve Wonder has been ranked as the #1 greatest R&B artist of all time by Billboard. Recall that Billboard recently released its list of the 75 best R&B artists of all time. The publication explained that the ranking was based on vocal prowess, body of work, career longevity, industry achievement, game-changing influence, and enduring generational and cultural impact. Steve Wonder topped the list, followed by Aretha Franklin, Michael Jackson, Beyonce, and Whitney Houston. And that's all we have for you at this hour. Do ensure to follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website at spectrumtvlive.ng. You've been watching Spectrum News within the week. I am Emedion James. Do have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.